G'day YouTubers, Harry Houdini here, down in Australia. Now it's a lovely day and I've got all my work done, so it's time to start working on some of those things that have been sitting on my bench for a while. Because remember back in October, if you watch that, go back and watch that, go back and watch October's up to date. Now, in October I said, I've got to clear the bench, I've got to get all these tanks done before I do anything else. And of course, I started a few other projects. As you well know, because, you know, I can't help myself. So we've got a bench full of bloody 38 Ts and 35 Ts, and we've got the snowmobile, that's coming along. I'll do a video of that probably after Christmas, showing you where I'm at with that lovely little Aerosand Soviet snowmobile. It's mighty. But I had some comments on some old videos, and the one fella said, looking forward to part 5, and I realised part 4 was way back in June. Bugger me. Haven't done much more with the Panzer II. Now I did dry brush it. It's had a little bit of dry brushing to break up the Dunkel Gray, and I did get the decals on. And you know, some basic things were painted, and in the last video I put all the tools on. So all the tools are on her. She's all ready for the final weathering, washing, muddying, and generally doing the last things that I like to do, just to bring her alive. I don't get it too muddy, I don't over weather, I still kind of like them pretty, if you know my kind of style, but we need to get this Panzer II finished. So in this video, I'm going to see how far I can get in getting some washes on her, getting some mud, some chips, and maybe a little more dry brushing to bring out the highlights. So let's have a go. Well, here is my nice little Panzer II, and you'll see I've got the decals on. There's just a few of these crosses, these little Falcon crooks, whatever, Falcon crosses I like to call them. I know that's not right. They're on, and I had done a little bit of rust effects there on the muffler, and of course the tools are all painted up in the last video. But the purpose of this video is to do the other effects that are required and to get all the weathering and the washing done. Now, first off, we're going to use this, and it's blue for Panzer Gray, and it's a MIG product. It's pretty heavy going stuff, you've got to be really sparing with it, otherwise it goes very dark, as my experiments proved well before I ended up spraying it. Now also, I'm going to use this. This is streaking grime for Panzer Gray. It's exactly the same streaking grime that I used back on the SU-152, if you've seen the weathering videos there, and I'm pretty well going to use the same sort of tricks. I'm going to give it a wash, I'm going to put some streaks on. Then I'm going to add some chips, which I'll do with a bit of black and silver paint and a brush. But then I'm going to use this enamel wash. I'm going to put some rust effects on, because these tanks, they were around for most of the war, and they would have got pretty well, you know, battered up and rusty and all the rest of it. They would have had a hard life. So that's basically stage 1 of how we're going to do the weathering. Alrighty, let's get on with it. I'm all ready to do the Panzer Blue wash. Now I've got the MIG Blue, and I've got some odorless solvent here, which is sort of like a terpenol. It's an odorless terps, which is a little less offensive on the snoz, if you've seen my previous videos. I've got a brush here that I'm going to use to almost do a pin wash, and I've got my eyedropper here to basically measure everything out. Now, you could put this on pretty well 100%, and if I'd painted this a lighter shade of grey to start with, then the blue for Panzer Gray probably would work very well, because it's going to give the whole thing an overall tint. But I haven't. I've already painted this a darker colour, this gunship grey, which I really liked, which is very close to the finished colour they want anyway. So my blue for Panzer Gray is going to take this just a little bit too dark, and then I'm going to have to come back and do some dry brushing to bring it back up again. But that's okay. That's my method, and I'm happy to do that. Now, because I know how ferocious this stuff is, I'm going to thin it a little bit for my wash. So I'm going to do about 50-50, and that's what I found is all I'm going to need. So, childproof locks, can't get into these bloody things. Here we go. So using my little dropper, I can measure out, I'm going to measure out 1 mil. That's quite a lot. That'll be enough for today. These are great, these little things. I got a whole stack of them for a few shekels. Well, hardly even 1 shekel, if you know my shekel conversion. Now, I've already given this quite a shake, but just so that you know, you've got to give these things quite a bit of a shake. So, again, I'll measure out one. As you see, it is very blue. Very, very, very blue. That's thinning it down nicely. Alright, try not to splatter it everywhere. Harry Houdini, put that out of the way. Make a god-awful mess. I wouldn't want this stuff falling out. See, you can see how dark it is. It's terrific. So it's really, equivalent of a black panel line wash in some ways, but it's a blue one. It's actually more green, I think, and it's a sort of greeny blue. But by the time you wash it in with this colour and then you dry brush, it should come out right. Now, the school of thought is that you will spray your vehicle in either a satin or a gloss coat, like Future or whatever. And yeah, if I'd painted this in acrylic flat paints, I would need to put a gloss coat on for doing this trick. But this is how I used to do it, which was using my Tamiya rattle cans, and that stuff is basically a lacquer, and that produces a really good undercoat that I find you can go straight over the top and do your washes. And in some ways, with all the stuffing around I've had with the airbrush, the old rattle can method was just so easy. I had it down pat. So we're going to do that. So assume if you had painted your vehicle with acrylics or enamels, you need a gloss or at least a satin coat over the top. I wouldn't recommend a matte coat because then it sort of does strange things. So you need at least a surface that this wash can run on. Alright, so let's see what happens. So we'll basically just pop this wash into crevices and it already starts to run and disappear into them. And I'm being a bit messier than you would if you're doing a perfect panel line wash, because I know what I'm going to do next after this. I'm going to do some more tricky stuff. So we'll just do this area here, the video, and then things that I want to really get that whole blue effect. In fact, I pretty well want it everywhere, but I want it more around the edges of things. Because I don't mind the colour that I've got, I'm just really looking for a panel line wash, and it's also going to introduce a bit more blue into this. So I'll just sort of be creative and put it into crevices and places that I want to put it. So it's not what you do on an aircraft, it's not a perfect pin wash, it's a Harry Houdini sort of grungy wash, but I know this will work. This will give me what I want. Now I normally would take the turret off and do all this, but just for the purposes of what I'm showing you here, I'll do this. Now, in this diamond plate, that's a good place, and you can see it just runs. You see how it runs into there? I don't know if you can, the distance you are. You're miles away, so I can, because I've thinned this down, I know this will just run. And it's going to look nice underneath the tools. It's going to look good there as well, create a bit of shadowing. Essentially that's all you're trying to do with the wash, you're trying to emulate some shadows and try and bring out some details. So anything that's indented is going to pop right out. And that's what it'll do. Alright, so I've got the whole vehicle to do here, so we might speed this up a bit and I'll get a wash all over this. Now my filters, well, a wash, it's more like a filter in some ways, isn't it? But it's a wash because it's too heavy to be a filter. What I've done now is I've added some more of the odorless terps to, there was just some dregs in there really of the wash. And I've used that to just do, as it's sort of just starting to dry a little bit, is to basically go over areas where I don't want it too heavy and to get my wash to run into the creases and the crevices. So I'll work it into the areas that I want, and also by doing this I'm thinning out. So sort of, if you've seen the SU-152 where I basically put on the grime and then I wipe it off, sort of doing that, it's just sort of the thing that I do, that I know that I can slop this stuff on everywhere and I can then go and sort of feather it and adjust it. So like an area in the middle here I don't really want a lot, I can basically use the brush to take that out. But there's still the odorless terps there, so it's still basically allowing it to have a graduation from the edges to the middle, which I'm going to accentuate with dry brushing later, but that's just going to give me the effect that I want. So I'll fiddle with this until I've basically got all the surfaces with just that bit of the wash, and it's starting to linger in all the crevices, and see the little rivet holes here, and they're all filling up with my wash, but it's basically running off the other surfaces, which is why you need a sort of a gloss or a very smooth coat to get this to happen. If you've just got matte acrylic on there, it's not going to happen. You put it on and just go boom, and just soak in and make an all god almighty mess. But to get this sort of effect, you need at least a semi-gloss or a satin or a full gloss surface, so you can get this stuff to run. And that's the idea, you're trying to make the enamel run into holes and to do the things you want to do. Anyhow, that's got as far as I can take it for now. So I'm going to leave that to dry overnight, and then we'll come back and I'll add some grime and some chips and some rust, and this will really start to come alive. It's taken a couple of days, but finally that odorless thinner has dried. It's one disadvantage with that stuff. It does seem to take quite a while to dry. But the effect that I've got is what I wanted. That the body has blued up a little bit, and all the little crevices and nooks and crannies, they've now got that wash in there. So it's bringing out all my panel lines, it's helping to sit around the raised parts, and in the lower areas around them, it brings them out, and it makes it all come alive. So it might be a bit hard to see in the video, but believe me, it's done the trick, and I'm really happy with that. In fact, that's so close to what I was trying to achieve with the box art, because really it's the box art's what I liked about the kit, and I'm very close to the look of the upper hull. So I've really only got to do the muddying and the messing up of the lower hull, and that won't take long at all, really. In fact, I'm not going to need much grime on this, because I think my wash has given me most of what I need. I will need some dust and some mud here on the wheels, but the wash has already broken up the uniformity of the paint job and started to give me the sort of definition that I want. Hopefully now you can see the effects that I've managed to achieve with that wash, and the panel lines are definitely darker than they were before. There's also a sort of smudginess and griminess about the vehicle, which I've managed to achieve just by using that wash. So that's worked well, and the wheels, they're not as shiny as they used to be. They're sort of grunged up a bit. So I won't need much of the grime, and I won't need much of the rust, but we'll leave that for another time. What I'll do to finish this video off is we'll add some mud and soil and dust. Now, I will need to separate the top of the hull from the bottom of the hull again to do this, because you can see there's just not much room there under the tracks. And luckily I have left this so it can be separated, mainly because I've got that interior and I like to open it up and have a look at that interior. So I will do that off camera, but what I'll do is I'll show you what we're going to work with. Now I'm going to use some of this weathering powder, which is dirt, and I'll need a pigment fixer for that. And then I'm going to use this Tamiya Paint Flat Earth, and I'm going to use this Megafix enamel cursed soil, which will work really well for the sort of dust. So between this acrylic and enamel, I'm going to do some tricky stuff. Now if you've seen the SU-152 video, you might know the effects and tricks that I can do, and you may not need to watch this. You can go over sleep, it's alright. Fast forward to the end, to the final reveal. Otherwise, for the rest of you who might be interested, let's get on with this. Right, I've separated, through the magic of video, I have separated. Now the reason I've done this is I need to get into here for my mud effects, and I can't really do that with the top on. So this is something that I need to do when it's all separated. You can see the nice interior now, can't you? There you go. Even found the missing radio and a few things and stuck them in. Alright, so let's do it round this way, so you can see what's going on and I can see what's going on. Okay, so what I will do is I will need a little bit of the fixer, not much, just a little bit, and I'll need the weathering powder. Now, this is how I do this. It's not exactly how everyone else does it, but this is my effect. Now, I get a bit of the weathering powder on a brush that I'm not too worried about, and I'll just pop it in there, right, where I want my dusty effects. Or mud. Really, it's not dust, it's mud. So where I want mud, that's where I'm going to pop these in. So, you know, get it in all around there. And I also want it along the top here a bit. It's going to be tricky because I probably should have masked off the body, but if I'm careful, I can get just a little bit along there. Okay, and there's a bit there on my wheels. Right, so that's already sort of given that a little bit of a muddy appearance. And I don't want a lot. This, my Panzer is a street Panzer. He's a town guy. He doesn't really spend a lot of time out in the muddy fields. He's just been probably getting around the Parisian streets and doing a bit of law and order there. That's why his tracks aren't that muddy. I weathered up my tracks with my usual method, and I'll leave a link in the comments section of the channel clip so that you can see how I've done that sort of track weathering, because I did that recently on a couple of other builds, so I don't see any need to repeat that. You can go back and have a look at that. So what I do now is I very gently dab on the fixer. Oh, I'm knocking everything flying. Oh dear. Now, I've got to be careful not to get in too close and actually brush stroke the pigments. If I do that, they're going to lose their nice 3D texture. So I'm just kind of very carefully, and you don't need much, I'm just dabbing this in, but I'm letting, and I'm also going to put around here that little bit of, so I can here I'll feather it out a bit, because I want it just to kind of get stuck in the gaps there. There's not much, and similarly on here I'll just kind of, there's not much. Okay, so basically what I need over here, where I've got it, it doesn't probably matter if I get a little bit of soil in the cabin area, because that would happen as well. That'd be real. It doesn't matter if I get a little bit on the tracks, because that's all part of mud and grime and gunk and shit and everything. That's what it does. That's what it's all about. So that's that part done. Now that's stage one. I'm going to use a little bit of this flat earth. I know it's acrylic, and what we put on there was probably an enamel fixer. Maybe, but there is method to my madness. Now I'm going to need a toothbrush, and I'll just need a little brush here to get it onto the toothbrush. Knocking everything flying. So what I want is, I want effects up that way. So I actually want to go like this. Maybe you can't see it, but this is working after a fashion. Put some big ones on. And what I'm getting is I'm getting a splattering on there, as though there was some soil, mud. I think it's beginning to sort of show up a little bit. Okay, now we are mixing oil and water, but I want to do that, and the reason I really am allowing it to do what we would normally avoid is the oil and the water are not going to be happy together, and so they will pool and they will basically form little fish eyes and things like that. That's what I want. I want that sort of effect because I want it to look like mud is. Mud has that sort of natural look of something wet going on to something greasy, and then it does all those fisheye effects and does all those horrible things. So that is perfect. That has actually done exactly what I wanted. So that is good. We'll do some more of that in a sec. Now, a part we often forget in the kits when we're making our tanks is underneath the fenders. Well, that's going to get all muddy and horrible as well. And I've been a great one to sort of completely forget that and just basically go my merry way and do all the weathering, and then I've got a perfectly clean fender, which is absurd because the fenders won't be perfectly clean, will they? If there's mud and everything being kicked up by the wheels, well, this is where they're going to accumulate. You've only got to look at any car and have a look at the fenders in any motor vehicle, and that's exactly what happens. So we mustn't forget that, because it won't easily be seen, but it'll be more obvious if we don't do it, because then if you sort of look underneath or you look sideways, you go, well, that looks very clean under there. And of course you don't want that. You want this to look kind of muddy and horrible. So quite liberally putting on my pigments, because it really will sort of cake up under here, as you know if you've looked at any four-wheel drive and had a look underneath the fenders on the old 4B, it does get a little bit muddy under there. Right, so there we go. That's lots. That's all we're going to need. And again, same trick as we did before. I've got some pigment fixer here. Probably going to need a little bit more. Oh dear. Yep, a bit more pigment fixer. That's enough. That's enough. Right, and again with my big brush, and I'm just going to drop it on. And I'm trying not to actually put brush strokes in, because that would spread out the pigments, and I don't want that. I want the pigments to have a lumpiness and a vertical nature. So I'm literally just dripping this in here. Okay. And if I get a little bit on the top of the body, that doesn't matter either, because that's going to add to my general dirtiness. If it's a bit too much, I can wipe it off. It'll come off with a little bit of terps or odorless thinner. So you can sort of tone this down. If you go too far, you can kind of rub it and take it back. But the trick is just not to put too much on. Like with everything, do a little bit, see if that works, and if you're happy with that, you can always do some more. Alright, so that's all looking nice. I'll put that over here. So there's the finished tank with her mud and her soil and her little bit of dustiness on. And that's all I wanted. And it's just a very simple technique and a bit of a subtle sort of trick that I use, because that's it. I don't want to go big blobs of mud. That's all I was trying to achieve. Remember, I was going after the box art look. Now, if you have a look at the front here, you'll see that's where I've really gone to town. You can see the dark pigment is underneath, and then there is the flat earth, the Tamiya, and then even up here, that is the cursed soil, the Meg effect. So all three of those colours work together nicely to give me the effect that I wanted, to have a bit of a dusty sort of speckled sort of dirty tank. It's not too dirty, but just enough. So I've achieved what I set out, which is I wanted to get the look of the box art, and I'm pretty happy with that. So that's all we can do for this video. Next time we'll come back and I'll put a little bit of streaking grime on, a bit of chipping and a tiny bit of rust. Not much, but we're about 99% there. So I hope you've enjoyed seeing how I put all these different methods together to achieve the kind of look that I want. Alright, well that's it. It's goodbye from Australia, and it's hooroo from Harry Houdini.